We can move on to our second topic now, which is something you both have mentioned in passing, the consumption in China. So second topic is China experiencing a consumption downgrade? Consumption has been a hot topic for quite a long time in China. There have been suggestions from outside that consumption levels are weak, particularly in relation to developed nations. It's a percentage of GDP. We've got some examples here, one from Nikkei Asia. Most Chinese feel an uneasy consumption downgrade, and another from the South China Morning Post. China's middle class feels the squeeze as property slump hits pocketbooks. So boosting domestic demand was highlighted in the Central Economic Work Conference last year, and also in the government work report just last Wednesday. And there are plans and targets to rise disposable income as well. So Professor Li, can you tell us how big an issue consumption levels are in China? Is it really important? And if so, what measures are being taken to try and improve levels?
Of course, the stimulus of Chinese consumption is always an important subject. But I have a problem with the term consumption downgrade. I think that is a very, very highly problematic. It seems to suggest that like a tourism, like a more affordable or rational consumption nowadays is a downgrade compared with the previous consumption, which pattern which heavily emphasizes the real estate fever. So we may ask ourselves, is that realistic, or is it feasible and desirable? The only just like each family to buy numerous, housing units. I think this is itself it's a crazy or dangerous. So I would say the so-called consumption degrade should be changed to consumption adjustment or consumption normalcy, return to consumption more normalcy. Now, one thing is about tourism. People travel around the country. Wang Wen just mentioned that. It's really fascinating. Last spring festival, this spring festival, the domestic traveling, the total number is almost 500 million. This is more than 1.5 US population, just within 1 week or a couple of weeks move around. That's very, very dynamic. So if this kind of dynamic continue, China's consumption, even more serious way, will bounce back. And also that the consumption become more diversified. And on one part, reduce the previous dangerous pattern for put the money, 80%, 70% to the property. This is extremely dangerous, need to be fixed. So now people invest in different things. I think the more important is to find the different ways and for other development take priority. So I think it's a welcome development to see Chinese urban dwellers or even rural dwellers have the different ways of consume. Now, of course, we hope that the consumption rate will continue to increase. Chinese saving rate will not maintain that high, but the confidence or development should look at it should be avoiding the put all the money in the real estate. So this is happening. I think that's a healthy development.
Professor Li says there's a readjustment and a positive one in terms of trends of consumption, Professor Wang. Do you think that that's the case? And can you see any other areas where consumption can be more of a challenge, because it has been stuck at a 40%, 45% of GDP ratio for a little bit, which, as I mentioned earlier, is much less in developed countries. Can you say why that might be and how that might change over time?
I agree that the so-called consumption downgrade is a very ideological terms in economics. For example, I tell you a story. In the past, I used to love driving and thought that a private car was a symbol of identity and standards, even if it was congested every day. But I have to drive and maintain my car and pay a lot of money. But now, honestly, I don't like driving because the public transportation system is constantly improving. And taking a car from Didi is also very convenient. So choosing to travel by subway or bus is both environmentally friendly and economical. So I pay less. So is it so-called consumption downgrade? No, I don't think so. It's not called consumption downgrade, but rather rational consumption or consumption rationality. Right now, Professor Li Cheng talking about the consumption normalization. I think this is also my lifestyle become normal, much normal than before. And tell your database you mentioned in 2024, China total consumption is 48 trillion yuan, and an increase of 3.5% over the previous year. And some consumption grows very fast, much faster than the other dimensions. For example, right now, Professor Li mentioned, and also I mentioned many times, tourism consumption increased by 70%. This shows that Chinese people begin to enjoy life. And also, of course, we know that China real estate consumption is indeed relatively low, but the proportion of Chinese owned houses or apartment is highest in the world. You cannot always buy a house or buy a car. However, on the other hand, the automotive market is still growing with green consumption, technology consumption, and cultural tourism consumption I just mentioned, all on the rise. So I agree with Professor Cheng right now said, I think instead of saying that China is downgrading consumption, it is more accurate that to say that China is transforming consumption or consumption transformation. So this is my point.